Okay, it is 6 o'clock on Monday, May 26, 2022 at 6 o'clock p.m. I'm going to open this meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to set a date for a hearing requested by Julian M. Suso pursuant to the town charter, section C510C.
Madam Chair, I motion to schedule a hearing as requested by Julian M. Suso pursuant to the Town Charter Section C5-10C for June 21st at 1 o'clock p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room. The town moderator has agreed to this date and time.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much for that. And just for the public's information, at this hearing of June 21st, the Select Board will be represented by Special Counsel Robert Troy. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Making me work.
start with the opening procession. With the honor guard, call the colors, please.
Detail, present, arms. Detail, order, arms. Left, face.
If you would all now join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Detail, present, arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the heart of brave.
Order! Arms!
Thank you. If you have a seat, you may sit.
Parade! Rest!
I'd like to invite our police chaplain, Reverend Rebecca Mancelli, up for the invocation.
Thank you, Chief. Let us pray. Oh, holy God, we come today to honor and remember our police officers who put their lives on the line every day, facing dangers and uncertainties the rest of us cannot imagine. And some of them pay the ultimate price for our protection. They pay with their lives. And we pause to offer our gratitude and humble recognition for their sacrifice, especially here as we remember Falmouth Police Officer Samuel Pierce. We pray for the families across our country who grieve the loss of their loved one who wore the badge and served with dignity and courage. May your Spirit grant them peace and bring to mind memories they will forever cherish, knowing that love never dies. Be with us now as we honor and remember the men and women in blue. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. I want to welcome everybody today, friends, relatives, police officers, and most importantly, the families of police officers. The family members of Samuel F. Pierce, who are present today. Nancy Martin, niece, thank you for coming. Nancy Tessia, great niece. And Walter Benjamin, great nephew. Thank you. I want to recognize the dignitaries that are here in the audience today. Peter Johnson Stobbs, Acting Town Manager, thank you for attending. Select Board members, Chair Douglas Brown, Vice Chair Nancy Taylor, Samuel Patterson, Angele Scott Price, and newly elected Scott Zielinski. Thank you all for coming today. From the District Attorney's Office, Max Mitrakis, I'm sorry, Max, I know I said I'd butcher that. Sheriff Cummings was graciously able to send a photographer, Stephen Smear. Thank you for attending. We appreciate it all the time. Fire Chief Tim Smith, Peter McConaty, DPW Director. Thank you. Jeremiah Pearson from the Parks. And just so everybody knows, the Parks Department was here the last 2 days and made this all look beautiful, and really appreciate it very, very much. Greg Endicott, Facilities Director. Of course, our police chaplain, Reverend Mancelli. And I know there's a lot of department heads here. I can see faces out there. I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day and coming here today. This is really important to the men and women of the Falmouth Police Department. Police Week. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, in the calendar week in which May 15th falls. As National Police Week, it established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962. National Police Week pays special recognition to all those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. The purpose of this week is to honor police officers everywhere and to remember those heroes who have lost their lives in the line of duty. It is sometimes forgotten that a police officer's job is challenging, tough, and too often unknown. Along with the pressures to serve, police officers are in continuous contact with criminal and disturbed individuals. The constant threat of danger and the routine observation of serious injury and death. I am proud to tell you that the special individuals who have chosen this to become Falmouth police officers have excelled in this difficult profession and have made a positive contribution to this community each and every day. These men and women deserve to be recognized for their commitment to making our town safe and a better place to live. As police chief, I have the privilege and honor to serve with the finest police professionals I have ever known. While we are not perfect and are open to criticism by the very nature of what we do, I am proud to affirm to all that we have made a commitment to provide professional, comprehensive policing in a partnership with all citizens. We also pledge to be open, responsive, in an effort to improve our services. We will continue to reach out to you and ask you to do the same. Finally, we will strive to serve and protect together. To the men and women in blue, thank you for what you do. To those who have made the supreme sacrifice, we will never forget. Can I get a round of applause for the men and women in blue, please? I have some stats I want to read to you, and it really does bring it to light. In 2021, it was the largest year of officers killed in the line of duty. 615 officers died in the line of duty last year. 62 by gunfire, 24 by automobile related, 17 by vehicle assault, 73 by other, and the new one that was added is COVID-19. 439 officers lost their lives to COVID-19. In Massachusetts alone last year, 5 officers lost their lives. Detective Michael Dion, Chicopee Police Department, end of watch, 11/10/2021, heart attack. Officer Lou Ha, U.S. Medical Center Police, end of watch, 10/21/21, COVID-19. Officer Emmanuel Familia, Worcester Police Department, end of watch, 6/4/21, drowned. He drowned whilst trying to save a young man who also drowned. Sergeant Michael Patrick Cassidy, New Bedford Police Department, end of watch, 4/28/21, COVID-19. And Detective Stephen R. DeFossi, end of watch, 1/13/21, COVID-19. Also in 2021, we lost 21 canines, who are also a big part of police departments that have them. So far, the numbers in 2022, 105 officers have died in the line of duty, 19 by gunfire, 10 by automobile related, 55 by COVID-19, 7 by vehicle assault, 14 others for a total of 105, and 1 from Massachusetts, and that was Trooper Tamara Bushy, end of watch, 3/3/21, a car crash. And so far this year, 8 canines have lost their lives. You know, last year, Falmouth Police Department had its 100th anniversary when we were proud to serve this community for over 100 years, the men and women that did that. And in 100 years, 1 is too many, but the only person that has lost their lives in the line of duty was Samuel F. Pierce. We've had police officers shot that you may remember, Donnie DeMiranda and Ryan Moore, and back in the 70s, we had an officer that was ambushed. But Samuel F. Pierce, a Falmouth police officer who was on patrol when his motorcycle was struck by a vehicle. He was only 37 years old. Patrolman Pierce died at the scene from a fractured skull. The driver was charged with leaving the scene of the accident and operating to endanger. I think the stats speak for themselves. The job is not getting any easier, any safer, but those men and women who chose to put that badge on do it for a reason. They do it to protect their communities, and as do I. And we appreciate your support when we have events like this. So, thank you. Now, I'd like to invite up some guest speakers. First guest speaker is Peter Johnson-Staub, Acting Town Manager.
Thank you, Chief Dunn, for your leadership and the tradition that you've built here of community policing that we continue to build upon, and for the context of this day and National Police Week. Today we express our gratitude to Falmouth police officers who have chosen to put themselves in harm's way to protect our safety. We were reminded of just how dangerous police work can be last Tuesday when officers responded to the scene of a tragic shooting outside 49 Old Main Road to find a distraught individual in front of the house holding a firearm. As many of you know, this address abuts the North Falmouth Elementary School. The training and professionalism of the Falmouth Police Department command staff and the officers on the scene was brought to bear on this challenging and dangerous situation, supported by the State Police, the Barnstable County SWAT, and Mashpee Police Department. Thankfully, the result was that the school and surrounding neighborhood were secured in an orderly fashion, and after a lengthy standoff, the suspect surrendered to police custody without incident. This successful de-escalation of a dangerous situation should be celebrated widely. This incident is a tangible example of how police work is becoming more dangerous, and it should serve as a reminder of the imperative that we explore new methods and new training for the police force to build on the successes of the Falmouth Police Department, to de-escalate conflict and avoid injury or worse for our police officers and the members of our community. Today, we honor and remember Officer Samuel F. Pierce, and we thank the members of our police department for choosing a career to protect the safety of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'd now like to invite Douglas Brown, Chair of the Select Board, for a proclamation.
Chief. And before I read this, I'd like to thank the Falmouth Police for their compassion, their patience, and their bravery with that incident last week. Very similar to what happened with the DeMiranda and Moore shooting, where they were compassionate even to the man who shot them. That's incredible, and I really appreciate that kind of professionalism. Proclamation for Police Week. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officer Memorial Day and the week in which it falls Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the town of Falmouth play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of the town of Falmouth. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, responsibilities of their police department. And that members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life, property, and protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression and intimidation. And whereas the police department of the town of Falmouth has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency which unceasingly provides a vital public service. Therefore, we, the Select Board, call upon all citizens of the town of Falmouth and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 15th to the 21st, 2022 as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies in which all of our people may join in commemorating police officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Further, we call upon all citizens of the town of Falmouth to observe Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 as Peace Officers Memorial Day, in honor of those peace officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives or have become disabled in the performance of duty, especially our own officer, Samuel F. Pierce, who lost his life in the line of duty on August 16, 1933. I further call upon the citizens of the town of Falmouth to observe a moment of silence on Wednesday, May 18, 2022, in their honor. In witness thereof, we, Douglas C. Brown, Nancy R. Taylor, Samuel H. Pattison, Megan English Braga, and Angela Scott Price, hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed on this day, 9th day of May, 2022.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank all board members for that. Appreciate it very much. I just want to go off program here for a second about this memorial garden, because I know there's a lot of new faces out here and things like that. The memorial garden was put together because we had one prior to the renovation of the senior center and everything like that. It was like out in the middle of the parking lot. It was like a desert. But we really needed to have something to honor any officer that lost their life in the line of duty, which is what this was all done. It was designed with the help of Peter McConaughey, and the DPW helped construct it, and the men and women of the police department. And I think it really came out something that will honor the men and women. And Sammy, as you'll see momentarily, Samuel has a stone up here which represents his loss of life in the line of duty. These other stones, they have honor, integrity, dedication on them. What these stones are, they're memorial stones. A lot of police departments have a in memoriam plaque in the police department itself, which lists all the officers who have just died of natural causes, but they had served to their community with dignity and honor. So we thought, what better way to do it than stick a plaque on a wall inside of a building that most people will never see than to do a memorial garden, and we did these stones. So the names on these stones here that you see throughout here, and there's one down the far end for the canines, these are men and women who served 20 years or more with honor and retired, and they just lost their life through natural causes. But a way to keep their memory alive so that their families can come and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren and everything else can come and recognize that they serve this community. We put the names on the stone. So as people, someday my name will be on there, I assume. We all pass on, so, but that's what the memorial garden is. And like I say, and up here we have two stones, and one is for Samuel, and the other one is for Deputy John Robert Codfilia. He is the trooper, I mean, he's the sheriff who lost his life in Florida, where he sped his cruiser past a line of cars to block a one-way driver who was going to be taking out probably other people on that highway, and he lost his life. And the reason we have him here, people might ask, you know, why would we have somebody from Hillsborough County? There is a great connection with the Codfilia family here in the Falmouth Police Department. John Codfilia's father started out here at the Falmouth Police Department as a police officer. I worked with John. He then went on to the state police to have a great career, and he's retired. And we also have John Roberts' brother, Michael Codfilia, is a current member of the Falmouth Police Department. So we felt the connection. We felt it was important to have that stone here. And John Robert was brought back here to Massachusetts in a ceremony where he was buried here in Falmouth. So we thought it was appropriate to have his stone there to join our memorial. So that's a little history on it, because I've had people ask me and they're not really sure why we have this, but that's why we have it. So I now will call Sergeant Ryan Hurd up for a poem, A Part of America Died.
Post.
A part of America died. Somebody killed a policeman today, and a part of America died. A piece of our country he swore to protect will be buried with him at his side. The suspect that shot him will stand up in court with counsel demanding his rights, while a young widowed mother must work for her kids and spend many long, lonely nights. The beat that he walked was a battlefield too, just as if he'd gone off to war. through the flag of our nation won't fly at half-mast. To his name, they will add a gold star. Yes, somebody killed a policeman today, in your town or mine. While we slept in comfort behind locked doors, a cop put his life on the line. Now his ghost walks a beat on a dark city street, and he stands at each new rookie's side. He answered the call, of himself gave his all, and a part of America died.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant Hurd. Order to attention.
Detail. Hook, Chid. Hook.
What
Honor
now?
guard. Flags up.
We'll have the removal of the bunting and the placement of the wreath. Now Amazing Grace, retired Lieutenant David Cameron on the bagpipes, and Kate Zanello, drummer. Thank you. We'll now have the roll call and echo. Captain Brian Lowen and Sergeant Ben Guthrie.
Motorcycle Officer Samuel F. Pierce, August 16, 1933.
Motorcycle Officer Samuel F. Pierce, August 16, 1933.
Detail. Present arms. Order. Arms.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains and majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. From sea to shining sea.
And now I would like to invite Reverend Rebecca Mincelli, our police chaplain, back up for the closing prayer, please.
Thank you, Chief. Let us be in prayer. Oh God, we have been reminded of the risk and perils that daily face our officers. And as we leave here today, we pray for your protection over all in this department. Keep our officers free from harm and guide them in their daily interactions. And we pray, too, that even as they face not only physical threat, but often verbal abuse and disrespect, that they would feel pride in their work, knowing that they save lives, they work for justice, they keep order and stability in an ever-changing world. They make a difference for the good of Falmouth. Bless them in their work and in their lives. And may we, the people they protect, respect and show our gratitude for all they do. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Before I conclude the ceremony, I just noticed in the audience I see a couple good friends that came today. I'm very happy to see their faces out there. Representative Exaris, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. You're a huge supporter. I mean, you did many years in law enforcement, and as a representative, you're a huge supporter of law enforcement, so thank you. I also want to recognize Reverend Will McBain from the St. Barnabas Church. Great to see you here, sir. Appreciate it. I want to thank FCTV for filming this, and they're always great. But I would like to really give great appreciation and thanks to both the Department of Public Works, but particularly Jeremiah and his team. I mean, everything here that you see today is because of them, and they really put that extra effort in the last couple of days to make this really, I mean, it looks good all the time, but you put that extra effort in to make it really look good today. Really appreciate that. Thank you. And I also want to thank all of you for coming today. It means a lot to me, but I know it means a lot to the men and women of the Falmouth Police Department, because it just shows the support that you give us. That's going to conclude our ceremony. We're going to retire the colors in a second, and then after that, please stay, mingle with our officers, and we have some light refreshments to share with you afterwards too. Retire the colors.
Honor guard. Forward. March.
Bob and Bob, it's just us.
Correct. This is an internal meeting. There are no Bobs.
Morning. Good morning.
All right, so.
Good morning.
Good morning, but it was posted as a public meeting, isn't that right?
Yep.
Good morning.
Noreen, you're muted.
There you go.
Good afternoon.
Mara, welcome.
Hi, Maura.
Noreen, do you have audio? I don't think she has audio. No.
Yeah. Okay, does everyone have his and her equipment working? So your audio's on, your, all right, you can speak to us, we can hear you one way or another.
Yeah, Noreen just sent that message through. She can't hear anyone.
No.
Well, I think her
I just
on your own
responded to her
computer,
that we
Noreen.
can hear her. I just messaged her, so
Okay.
she knows we can hear her.
Okay, so it sounds like we're set to get going. We've got a full agenda today. As you folks know, we're going to look over some of the errors and omissions. We'd like to take a little bit of time to go over some of the definitions. So we were thinking maybe take a half an hour for those two topics, and then really dive deep into the home occupation and home-based service businesses for maybe another hour or so, and then we'll reserve the remainder of the time for the last two items, which is just accessory apartments and subdivision phasing.
Okay, but before we start that, I'd really like to know what, how you want to organize this, or how it would be best organized. It was decided at some point that I would have to chair the regular meetings with Bob and Bob and the entire group because it's a public meeting. What is the requirement now for this type of meeting where there are internal meetings? Is there a requirement?
These will be handled the same way. The only difference is that the Bob and Bob are not here. That's the only difference. They're being handled the exact same way. They're being publicized on the website. They're being recorded. So the only difference is that we do not have our consultants here, but otherwise everything stays exactly the same.
Okay, then I'll be chairing it. So if you want to speak, let me know. And what Jed has laid out, we can do the definitions part first and move on from there. If it takes a half an hour, fine, but if we finish sooner, we'll move along. So as last night when we were discussing this planning board, Jed observed correctly that we'll be really returning to definitions probably over and over as issues arise during this process. So don't imagine that this is the only conversation about definitions, but let's start there. And on the errors, oh, you want to just.
It's completely up to you. I'm just sharing errors and omissions, but if you want to hit definitions, we can do that as well.
Right, we either place, but let's get going.
Definitions, there you go.
Okay, if we want to do the errors and which will it be?
Let's stick with
We've got
definitions.
definitions up on the screen.
Okay, so let's go with definitions. And Michaela, you're taking the notes?
Yes, I can take notes, absolutely.
So you're recording, if any, would call them interim decisions are made, you're writing down what it is we think we need to do. Okay, so let's begin in the area of structures. Structures should be clear. Everyone agrees with that. Do people know what we're starting with as far as structures are concerned?
So what we figured is Noreen had sent this item to us, that perhaps she could speak to this item, but in a larger context, what we want to sort of get from folks is, are there items in the definitions that need to be changed, or if there are items that need to be added? And if so, if there's any suggested language, please send it to us. Or if there's just items that we need to research and do more work on, we could discuss those. But for this particular item, structures, I'll yield the floor to Noreen, because she was the one who sent it over to us, provided that her audio and microphone is working.
Hi, I think I'm good now.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, so just speaking for the zoning board, we have had some unusual circumstances where, I don't want to lost into the weeds here, but we've had circumstances in the past where people have suggested to us that sheds don't count as a structure. And of course, we know they do, because part of the bylaw and lot coverage is lot coverage by structure. And of course, that would be typically for single family use. It would be the house. It would include a shed if there's a shed, a detached garage if there's such. So obviously any structure on the lot should be included. So I guess what I'd be looking at is trying to clarify that a little bit, and as part of structure, and I think this again goes to the lot coverage circumstance, because typically in the residential developments zonings, there's a limit of 20% by right for lot coverage by structure. And you can increase that to 25% by special permit with the zoning board. That being said, what we're finding is with many of the smaller lots, people want to expand their homes. And the only way they can find to expand their homes is to have part of the house not count toward lot coverage. So we've had some creative people come before the board and suggest that landings and stairs are a quote landscape feature and are not part of the house. What I would assert is that if you cannot get into your house without the landing and stairs, they are indeed, even though made of a different material, because the bylaw does not speak to materials, it is indeed not a landscape feature, it is part of the house. So I think where we've had certain individuals who work with the town over a period of time, I think we need to be clear for everyone exactly what we're looking at. So when I started here, I did talk to the building commissioner, and he explained to me that by code, you need to have a 4x4 landing at a doorway. So where we had several homes that appeared to be the front facade of the house met, say, the 25-foot setback, we would exclude a 4x4 landing only that could encroach further into the street. The problem now, though, is you have properties that are at the waterfront, and these properties, in order to meet FEMA, are elevating their first floor. These properties, as they elevate, could have stairs that cascade virtually to the street in order to meet that, walking up to the second floor. So I guess what I'm looking for is for the group to come to some consensus about exactly what we're going to include as lot coverage by structure, and sort of as part of that, what we're going to look to count for towards setbacks so that we're consistent. Excuse me.
Frank and Mara, is there anything in case law that would apply here? Or would give a further definition that we don't see, but you might know?
I'm not familiar with any. I think this is pretty much left to local bylaws to define. That's
Gary, what has been the practice so far for the building commissioner's office on this?
A required means of egress side of a door is 3 feet in the direction of travel, the width of the door that is required by code. I would suggest that you put a limit. What size landing would take or a setback as to something in the vicinity of 4 structure attached to the house.
I'm getting a cutout. I'm getting a cutout from Gary's sound. Is anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gary, we're catching every third word of yours, Gary.
Okay, I don't know what to do to correct that. I was catching every third word of Noreen's.
Uh-oh.
So
That could be either very good or very bad.
Are you both at town hall? Is it a problem with the connection there?
I am at town hall and I'm assuming I'm fine. Is everybody hearing me properly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Jed and myself are at town hall, and I have had no issue hearing anybody.
So Gary, maybe it's your computer.
So did everybody get what is required by the building? A required means of egress?
Sorry, Gary, you're still cutting in and out.
Aside from, is there anyone else who has input that would help to better define this, or a sense of, do we want to leave it flexible and not better define it? I mean, we do have the ZBA, they're going to have to go there for their permits anyway. Maybe it should be a case-by-case thing.
Yeah, so Charlotte, if I could just jump in for a second. So that's what's happened to us at this point at the ZBA. We've actually had properties that have used stairs or steps that actually are within the non-allowed setback. And the ZBA has not been allowed to count that as a structure for a setback because they're falling under a landscape step definition. They're not physically attached to the house. In many cases, they use granite or some kind of a stone, but they're extremely large. And again, like Noreen says, it's happened a lot in these areas, closer to the water that have smaller lots, and they're just trying to emphasize the size of the house. So they're expanding the footprint of the house as much as possible to take up all of the coverage. And then they're adding these landscape features, which are the only entry into the properties. But the ZBA has not been able to define those as structure because they're falling under the building definition of a landscape feature. And it's happened more than a dozen times this past year. It seems to be becoming more and more frequent. And once one application uses it, because many applications are represented by, in general, the same group of attorneys, it just becomes an automatic with all the applications. They say, okay, this is what you do, and this is how we get around the steps. We've had the same thing coming up with lot coverage, like Noreen said, even including the parking and what she sent you from engineering. They're trying to get around the lot coverage by structures, parking, and paving
On Zoom,
by trying to following under these pervious surfaces that in all reality aren't really complete pervious surfaces, but we can't use that. It's just increasing. So I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know if there can be a definition used for special permits that's any different from the building department. My personal opinion is if you need some kind of a feature to enter a premises, no matter what the size, that should be counted as the premises. I know they're going by a 4x4 landing, but we have cases where they're calling them landscape features, and they may make them 8 feet long. Maybe take, for example, a farmer's porch. instead of doing a small landing for a farmer's porch, they do these landscape features across the whole front of the porch, which again would affect lot coverage and would affect the setback. So it's just something we're seeing very frequently. If there's any way that this could be fixed now or soon, it would be to the benefit of the town, because you're going to have, in these areas, you're going to have people just doing the maximum amount of space they can cover, and they're going to call everything landscape features.
Yeah, so here's the other part of the problem is we do not have a definition for landscape feature. That being said, I would be an advocate that a landscape feature would be a bird bath or something decorative, right? But the stairs and the landing are, whether they be attached to the house or not, and what material they're made of or not, are part of the access and part of the structure as a whole, because you could not get in and out of these houses without. So I guess what I would say to you is, how do you penalize someone who's constructing their house of wood and therefore their stairway of wood, and you tell them, no, you can't add your stairs, but yet the guy next door is using stone or brick, so it's okay for him to build whatever size he wants. So I guess I would be an advocate of, and maybe you pick a date, town meeting or whatever moving forward, where you revise your definition to state that, the dwelling includes whatever access and stairs you've provided, and that people are going to have to either comply with the percentage, or perhaps you have a little more flexibility for undersized lots. And perhaps you say, hey, look, if you've got a lot under, I don't know, whatever it is, 5,000 square feet or something, we're going to allow you to have lot coverage, 30%. And maybe that would be a way to provide some equity. But I think when you have, as Bob points out, these people who are circumventing the bylaw saying, well, this grand set of stairs that I'm putting in doesn't count because it's made of granite and it's not affixed to the house, right?
Charlotte? Well, it seems to me that two of the things that you had suggested are a better way of dealing with this than changing the definition of structures or trying to get at it there. That if we could have a definition of landscape feature and maybe change the lot coverage for very small lots, that would be a better way for the ZBA to have a tool to deal with this than trying to come up with a change here in the definition of structure. What do
No, I really think that you've got to include means of egress and ingress as part of the structure, whether it is detached or attached. And when you brought up a farmer's porch, Bob, that's got a roof over it normally. Or are you talking about?
No, I'm talking, yeah. So what they would do is they put the farmer's porch with a roof, and then in front of the farmer's porch for access, they would put like an 8-foot slab or a 10-foot slab not attached to the house, so that 10-foot slab walks directly up onto the farmer's porch. What they're doing is they're using the, in a case of a porch that's long, instead of putting a small set of what you normally do stairs, instead they put a much wider area, but they use it out of, again, granite, stone. And what they keep saying is we're not attaching it physically to the main structure. So they're falling under that it's not physically attached. And in many cases, they're also trying to fall under the landscape feature that it's under, let's say, 4 feet. The worry I get on the increasing lot coverage, I understand the idea behind it. But right now, on small lots, take areas of Mara Vista, Falmouth Heights, Old Silver, whatever those areas are that are highly dense. Right now, we have applications that have gone up to the 25% lot coverage. And it is a very large impact in a neighborhood at 25% on a 5,000 square foot lot. If you're saying now go up to possibly 30, It's fine if they're only dealing with stairs or access, but they're going to take that additional 5% and they're going to use that to actually build larger homes that cover more areas of the lot versus using it for the stairway. So if we could get a definition, I mean, we have had cases where we've said, well, aren't these entry? And our answer has been that, well, you can't count them as an entry because they're actually made of stone, not attached to the house, and they meet what a landscape feature would be. So I think it needs to be defined specifically for entry and not look into increasing lot coverages, because the areas that are going to go for the increased lot coverage aren't the acre lots. And they're not the large lots. They're the 4,800 square feet to 5,000 square feet. And when you increase those lot coverages on those small properties, it is a very big impact to an area. And I just think that would be going down another slippery slope with applications. And they would not use that additional lot coverage for entry. They would use it for other issues, sheds, different structures, different other storage that they want.
So I have an example of Needham's bylaw, which just to provide an example, if this is something, a path we kind of want to look into. Unenclosed, covered, or uncovered landings or entrance porches located on the first floor with no habitable space above it, provided that no more than a maximum of 50 square feet of landing or porch is allowed in the front setback. And the porch landing is limited to 5 feet. So there are some bylaws out there that talk about, size of, the landing can be 50 square feet, that can be allowed. And it's not in the front setback more than 5 feet. So just as an example, if that's something that this group thinks we should, a path we want to go down, we can definitely look into some other towns' examples.
Yeah, Michaela, maybe you could. I mean, that's a good idea that some of these other towns, I mean, they must be having the same issues that we have. So maybe we could see what kind of samples are in surrounding towns, or even, I don't know if there's anything on the Cape itself that might have had these issues because of smaller lots, but I mean, that's at least a positive direction to go in.
Yeah, just this one, the elements that are permitted in the front yard setback, they do say uncovered steps. But then, it talks about landings, which it sounds like landings is a little bit more of kind of the dilemma here.
So for example, you could have a property that meets the setback for the front, and now they're adding those entry or step areas within the non-allowed setback. That's the issue we've been getting into.
Yeah, and so this would say that it would be allowed if it's not more than 50 square feet. If it's more than 50 square feet, it's not allowed. If it's 40 square feet, okay, it's allowed in that not allowable setback.
Yeah, I think 50 square feet is a lot when
it is.
Number one. And number two, like I said, what I had worked out with Rod when I started here, because this was undefined, was that, okay, if you have the older homes and in order to comply with the setbacks, they were measuring to the foundation or the front facade, right? At which point in time, no stairs or landing had been constructed because they were doing the basics of the house first, right? So many of these homes appeared to comply because the front setback complied until they built in the landing and stairs. So what we were allowing was to have a house that would be set back at 25 feet, but that we were allowing a 4x4 landing to protrude from the front facade and still allow the house to be conforming. But I guess what I will say to you, the danger here is that when you jump into this abyss of landscape features, you're telling future contractors, well, you can build any type of landing and stairs because we're not going to count it. And that penalizes the people that are following the rules. So I guess what I'm saying to you is it makes sense to be consistent. You know that you have to provide a minimum landing of, and I think Gary was saying 5 feet. I think last I heard it had been 4x4, but I stand corrected if that's been changed. But I think it's fair to allow someone to have the minimum required landing And if that protrudes further into the, say, front, the street setback, that's fine. But if that landing becomes elevated such that there are 5 or 6 stairs that go further into the setback from the street, you're absolutely adding to lot coverage by pervious structure here, which is part of the house because you needed to access the house. So I think where people are saying it's not affixed to the house, that should not be what's determinative, because certainly you could also have a shed that sat right next to the house and, well, okay, maybe it's a separate structure because it's not actually attached to the house, but it still is taking up lot coverage. And like I say, I think what they're trying to do is get it removed from lot coverage by structure, because lot coverage by structure parking paving has a capacity of 40% lot coverage. So it was very convenient to have it shifted to that as opposed to lot coverage by structure.
Noreen, I don't want to cut you off. I think we completely understand where you guys are coming from. And, I think we need to look into what some other communities are doing. It sounds like, 50 square feet, just, this was literally the first bylaw I found is way too big. It sounds like we want to go more with like a 4x4 and put that in and say, okay, you can have an uncovered landing of 4x4 with no more than 5 steps leading up to it. Something along that line. And we can kind of draft something up and send it along. But it sounds like the group is, I don't want to speak for the whole group, but in agreement that something needs to be looked at for this particular issue. Is that fair to say, everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. But Michaela and group, I think it would be good to try and think of what the overall purpose of this is as far as the character of a neighborhood is concerned. And it's really to maintain a building line. And mostly you'd have to go case by case, but mostly the steps and so forth that are uncovered are in addition to the building line. So you don't want to have created something that pushes the building back in order for them to have the kind of landing or porch or whatever structure they want. You want some rule that is going to create a building line for that street.
I absolutely appreciate that comment, because what I will say to you is we also have had people who say, hey, my landing and stairs protrudes to 10 feet from the street. So I tell you what, I'm going to demolish my house and I'm going to rebuild my house at 10.5 feet from the street. So guess what? That's an improvement over the existing condition. But people will use those stairs to their benefit.
Okay, so it sounds like if we bring back some language, we can debate it, at another meeting. We want to try to be sensitive to everybody's time. So it's already 11:30. I think perhaps the general message here is that we are, as the planning department, taking in all of this input for items that need to be added for definitions. So Jonathan was very good and sent over some items that we'll be adding to our master list. We'll be using this at every one of our internal, but also all of our recodification meetings to sort of go through it on a slow and procedural way so that folks understand that there are a lot of definitions that need to be
right, but a couple of things. One, we've not covered something that's of interest to the planning board. We have been looking at one point, and we failed to get it from town meeting, a definition of structures that would allow ground-mounted solars panels that people are putting up in parking lots to come before the planning board as a site plan issue. And landed on the area of the definition of structures, and it would have a square footage thing, whether it's covered or not, so that it included ground-mounted structure, solar. So, Michaela, as you're doing your research, could you please, expand your thinking to include that concern and see what you can come up with?
Okay, there's also a ground-mounted solar right across the street from us, a home ground-mounted solar. And there are a number of those around too. that's a structure taking up part of the space in the yard.
Right, and that kind of roof thing is a structure, but it somehow has escaped the definition so far. So we would like to have that included.
It's a good thing to look at. Just as an addition to that, I think the reason you're going to see these increase on these ground-mounted solar is because on home sales, there has been a lot of complications with roof-mounted solar because the property owners have leases and they actually have control of the roof line. There are title issues with properties with roof-mounted solar. So I think you're going to see an increase in the future of people deciding not to do the roof-mounted and try to fit in some kind of a ground-mounted unit.
That's good to know. Okay, so we're ready now to move on beyond structures.
Yes.
We've got a lot of concerns out there. Wait a sec, I have to find that piece of paper. What comes next under the definitions, Jed, that we had to concern ourselves with?
I see Gary's hand up.
Gary?
Chapter 40A, Section 3, talks about limiting the amount of access and availability for energy providing equipment, meaning ground-mounted solar. So that might be something you want to look into as far as limiting and putting restrictions on that.
Well, and the part that's exempted from any kind of zoning restrictions is just the word solar. So what does that do for us? But a restriction, a requirement to come before a board is not a restriction, is it?
Just can't place
Hello?
Cut out, Gary.
Good, yeah.
We'll definitely make a note of that. 48, Section 3. Yeah, I think, Michaela and I, we wanted to provide this idea of the definition master list, basically just for that purpose, to show that, throughout this process, we're going to be gathering all of that information. But today's purpose, we really wanted to give you guys plenty of time to talk about home occupation and home-based service business. So, without going too into the weeds on definitions today, basic premise was just show you the list. If you've got definitions that you really are passionate about that are missing, please just email the two of us. We'll add it to the list and we'll touch upon it every meeting until we get some good definitions we can bring forward to town meeting.
Could you send us the list? Because I don't have it.
Yes, we will.
It would be very helpful to have that.
Yep. So we're going to work on a system where we can share it with everybody and they can see the changes that have been made.
Okay, and you can need to add landscape feature to that list if it's not already there. So we're going to move on to the errors and omissions.
Yep.
I didn't have a problem with the recommendations that were made. Let's see if anyone else did. Here it is.
So here's our working list of errors. And these are very simple things. Stuff like it refers to a certain section that's just an error. So it's 14.1I and it should be 14.1Z or whatever it may be. Simple errors that can be corrected by the town clerk. That's our understanding, but we need to confirm that when the recodification gets official. Which, by the way, we're about 3 days away, so we should be hearing back from the Attorney General's office very soon. The omissions section is our main example is the accessory apartment. We've got a lot of language that was not included, and I'm just scanning through it here to give you a sense for what was missing. And so that doesn't qualify as a error. It's an omission. That's going to have, it's our understanding that will have town meeting approval. So we'll need to fix that. And again, this document we'll be sharing with you folks as well. And then the last couple of items. So I've just identified the whole idea of in single residence, a home occupation may not necessarily be a by right use. And so I think we'll get into that discussion in a few minutes when we talk about home occupation. and home-based service business. But the main idea here is if you find errors, reference errors, or spelling errors, grammatical, whatever it may be, same with definitions, send it our way. We have this master list. We'll be going through it each one of the meetings that we have with you folks.
Okay.
We'll take
yeah.
a few.
I think on all the things about the accessory apartment, there was a subcommittee of the planning board that put this together. And I think that it would be the right way to go to have that subcommittee look at these suggested changes before our group does that. It would be good input. They're the most knowledgeable, and see what they think.
Well, so keep in mind now, everything that you see here in red that's underlined is just text that didn't make it into the current recodified bylaw.
There are a couple of things that are changes, I think.
Don't believe
I
so.
don't believe so either, yeah.
I believe it's just, this is old, this is just language that for some reason didn't get in there the way it should have. And so we'll simply be bringing in what is in the current E-code, which is the online version, into the recodified bylaw.
Okay, if that's true, then any other comments that anyone has?
Yeah, I do.
Pat?
Yeah, the way it is, it's under the tables section. And I find that extremely difficult because all the tables are very concise with columns. This is the full language of the bylaw. And I think it really needs its own, I don't know, section that it's not a table. And a table would be accessory apartment. Then you could have the other table part of it to the side. It could be a table in addition to, so it's easier to see where it's allowed, how it's allowed. But you've got the bylaw in its fullness. To try to squeeze this into a table twice over into the text is too much, I think.
Any other opinions on that? I agree with Pat, and I wonder, considering you need at least one permit, maybe two, for accessory apartments, couldn't this be moved to the special permit, maybe included in the table, but referenced to go to the special permit section, or wherever might be most appropriate?
I agree that that would be a good correction.
And it would avoid having it repeated twice under agricultural and residential.
Right.
It would make it much easier to understand.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the ADUs? Okay, then Jed, are we ready to move on to home occupation and home service business?
I believe we are.
Okay, could we have the legal department tell us what's the difference? What's the important difference? Yes.
Well, it's a definition, so we're able to create our own definitions.
Yeah.
Now, I know we have a distinction between a home-based service business and a home occupation, and they're actually different, but they are also very similar. So I think we have a lot of latitude as to how we want to do this. I'm not sure that there's any requirement in Chapter 48, Section 3, that's going to mandate that we do one way or the other.
Can I put in to my memory as to how it evolved? You probably will remember this, Frank. We had home occupation, and it was being expanded to the point where they were becoming contractors' yards in residential neighborhoods. And so it became absolutely necessary to put a further definition on that. And that became the home-based service business. So home-based service business was a subset of home occupation when it evolved. Do you recall that, Frank?
I do, but it's almost like the home-based service business is the overarching category and a home occupation is part of it. And I think today, given what we have gone through in the last few years and what we're probably going to experience going into the future, we're going to be dealing with this more and more.
Yeah.
And then we also have in there what I call like a home office, which is where there is something going on in the house that is connected with a business someplace else, but you don't even know it's there. Yet, is it something that we have to even consider? I don't know, but I'm not going to make that judgment right now. But in looking at this material, I thought that it's really a home-based service business, because even a home occupation morphs into a home-based service business in the blink of an eye. And I think that's what we're really trying to control.
So are you saying, Frank, then we want to flip it? Home-based service business is the main category.
I think it is.
And then we define certain home-based businesses under home-based service business.
Yes, and a home occupation is a home-based service business.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's my inclination right now.
That makes sense.
Could there be essentially an exemption for the circumstances that are not a problem? In other words, if
Yes.
it has no people who come or go from the house, no materials stored, no objectionable anything. In other words, I don't know, I'm a writer and I use one of the rooms in my house for my writing. I don't have people coming over. I'm not sending stuff out. There's no visual change for the neighborhood or no impact in any way. And that we could exempt that, and that we could then say, for other people, here's more specifically what we're looking at.
Yeah, if we're looking for uses that impact the neighborhood, if there are people coming and going, if there are employees, if there are materials stored, if there's equipment stored, if there's vehicles parked, but anything totally contained within the house and the entire operation is electronic connected to someplace else, I don't think it's really a subject to zoning.
Mm-hmm. We were looking at certain criteria, noise,
No.
that is detrimental to the neighborhood, noise, smoke. I'm losing the words. I had them typed somewhere. Jed, you probably know them.
Visual.
You don't want any objectionable features, right? Which could include everything from a sign. So, for example, obviously, if you're at home using a room, you're not going to have a sign out in front because you're not operating a business, right?
Right.
And that you can then capture essentially what the bylaw already defines as objectionable features, which is the noise, the smoke, the interference, all those happy things.
I think we don't have to do all this thinking by ourselves. When you Google this, it clearly has become an issue. Different professional organizations have come up with answers to it because of all of the electronic home operations and the exacerbation of all of that by COVID. And the things that seem to be of concern have been enumerated. We're not the first people trying to fix this. And I don't think we should act like that. And it could be that we want to rethink what we've got and start over with something that's cleaner and simpler so that we can distinguish between them, the things that are by right and you don't even have to come and talk to us about, and the things that you do have to come and get a permit about, and what we should be concerned about. Because now when we look at the two, they're very messy, and the only way to distinguish them by changing the name is to remember the history of how they occurred, and most people have no idea what that is. So if we were to begin with something that gives the overall intent of regulating it to begin with is to preserve the residential character of neighborhoods while reasonably allowing residents to use their dwelling to enhance or fulfill economic goals. That's one suggested thing off of the internet. There would be others. And define it as any occupation or business used full or part-time conducted within a dwelling, and we do have a good definition for dwelling, or an accessory structure, or both, by a resident of the property. so that you find out right away it's by a resident. And the things that seem to be of concern as we started to enumerate: appearance, type of activity, parking, storage, operator, square footage usage, number of occupations. You don't want one house to suddenly become and actually they're quite popular, where a single building can be used as kind of a hive of all sorts of people, who a rooming house of businesses. You wouldn't want that, and types of residential structures. And if we go use that as a guide, and I'd be happy to send it to Michaela to begin kind of a draft, just redraft the two things and separate it. The big separation, though, I think, and I'm interested in your reaction to this: how much is by right? How much do you need a permit for?
That's a very good
Yeah,
point.
so I think we had kind of, thought about breaking it down exactly as you just said, Charlotte, into really two different types of categories. You have the category where, to be honest, I'm going to take a step back and say, I think the people who are now working remotely and just, they work for business that's completely remote, they're not ever going to talk to town hall, and I don't think they need to. My husband works from home. We don't have anybody come to our house. Our neighbor works from home. No one comes to his house. No one, you would never know. There's no reason to have them come talk to us. So the first category you have would be, a lawyer who maybe once in a while has someone come by, an accountant. Once in a while, they're going to have one or two people stop by the house to discuss. And then you have a separate category where you have more of the potentially noxious type of materials, sounds, odors, electricians. They may have some equipment out there, a landscaper. So those are kind of the two categories I think that we need to break it down into, and how much oversight we want to have into both of those categories.
I would further say it's a home office with no employees.
Agreed.
That really
Yeah.
restricts.
Yeah.
Or one employee, so it's a number of
No, the
cars.
reason being, if it's a home office like we were discussing, there are no employees. If you've got a writer or somebody who works for a company remotely, that does not mean that somebody from that company can't drop in on occasion. But if you have employees, now you're starting to spread it beyond what I think we were originally talking about.
Yeah, employees who will be coming to the home. If you can work remotely and have 100 employees under you, as long as they just never come to your house.
Sure.
If they want to be in California, Tennessee, Oklahoma, great. But I think it's, employees who will be coming to the house. If you're a lawyer and you have a paralegal who's going to be working in your office, then that brings us to that second, that first category I was kind of talking about, where how much oversight do we want in that?
So then there's another category where people are actually making things on premises. So take, for example, a baker or a potter, where they're actually doing something on premises and having people come in to either purchase on premises or delivery out of it. I know that that we have dealt with a lot of those in the last 3 or 4 years. And that's when you really have to look at traffic impacts of neighborhoods, because there's some businesses that need a lot of deliveries.
And I think that would have to fall under detrimental to a neighborhood.
Yeah,
because the traffic. If you have a baker that's a perfect example. If you have a baker who has people, from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every morning, having tons of people coming in, that's a huge issue for neighbors who are trying to get on their way to work. So I totally agree that would have to fall into the second category, where that is detrimental to a residential neighborhood.
Would be what's an interesting thought for this group too are what you want to do with someone whose business is entirely conducted off premises. So in other words, they're not separately paying for office space. So perhaps calls or mail come into their home, but that, for example, like an electrician, other than, maybe some equipment that's stored, there's nothing at the house, right? They're all off doing office calls, plumber, same thing. They're not doing work at their house. They're just operating out of their house.
I think they would need to show that they are not doing work at their house, that they're not going to have equipment outside, that they're not going to be having plumbing and old toilets and things like that. I think that's a tougher one because there is the possibility for that to expand.
And we do look at that now. That is part of the one that's part of the usage we look at now. Is there storage? Are they offsite? And you can actually put those into the permits themselves that, this is what's allowed on site and everything else is stored offsite.
What would be the enforcement of this? Because not a lot, some that I know of, very few actually, kind of grew like Topsy. It wasn't the original intention, but it grew. And so is the enforcement going to be neighbors complaining?
So in Falmouth in general, the enforcement action in Falmouth is only by neighbor complaints. And I think one of the other things you're gonna have to look at is that it's my understanding, and I've been on both ends before, that when you do put in an enforcement complaint, they now require you to be in a butter. You could live in the general neighborhood, but if you're not a direct abutter, it's a little more problematic to get a complaint with the town. And I don't know if that's something that's morphed over time or not, but it's issues that have come up a lot in different neighborhoods. We frequently, just for example, let's say we have an application for a home-based business, and then in those cases, our radius is, 300 square feet, and we get people that aren't just direct abutters. We frequently get comments listing all the other, businesses or other things that are unpermitted in an area. We don't follow those up. That's something that someone has to do with the town. But I know on a business aspect, not having to do with the town, I've had former clients or people in neighborhoods that have had different issues that they were trying to get straightened out and have gone in to see about putting in a complaint. And because they're not a direct abutter, there was something that changed at town hall. So that's something maybe building department could look at. Mm-hmm. The other thing is they don't take anonymous complaints. So let's say you are in a abutter property. Let's say you have an elderly couple and there's an issue with next door. And they just want to say, look, I just want you to go over and check. Is this allowed? Is it something you can look at? If you don't sign a full complaint form, they're not going to follow it up. And the moment you sign the complaint form, your private information is immediately available to person or property you're complaining about. I've had that happen to me personally, where I over years, I had to finally put a formal complaint in. And by the time I got from the town hall to the bottom of the stairs, I had the person call my cell phone yelling about why did I go to the town hall. So it's an internal thing. It's something the town may want to look at. But I think a lot of times these complaints can be just as simple as, look, I think something might be going on. It might be just a nice conversation that people may stop whatever they're doing or comply. But it's very hard to get complaints in at the town hall. It's very hard to get them followed up on unless you go through these very specific procedures. People are afraid to do it. They're afraid of retribution. They're afraid, if you're a second home.
Yeah, I'd like to interject on a lot of that. First, you don't have to be a direct abutter. If I get a complaint form at all, I always follow up on it. You don't have to be a direct neighbor. If a formal complaint comes in and it's internal and I have to enter onto the property to take pictures, whatever the situation is, I follow up on it. There was an example that had to go to the ZBA for an electrician. That was a neighbor down the road. And it was based on, a non-conforming lot. I've discussed with town council Frank that regarding anonymous, because when I started a few years ago, it was informed to me at the time, the building commissioner, that it had to be anonymous. I've discussed the issues that Mr. Dugan has mentioned about elderly people mentioning about they're nervous about complaining and writing down, having their name on a complaint because they live alone or whatever the case may be. If I get a complaint that seems valid and I can see it from
a public road, then I potentially can follow up on it, depending on the situation. And if I come across any of those, I will reach out. I haven't had any yet, but I will reach out to town council. But I always follow up regarding any complaint that comes in. And I haven't had anybody contact me saying they have a hard time following up, filing complaints. With our new system, unless if I entered into the system as a valid complaint, it's not readily available for the public. It has to be on permitized to be available.
That's good information, Gary. Thank you. Jonathan, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, that was me, not
That was
Gary.
Oh, that is you. I can't tell because your video's off.
Oh, I apologize. Hold on one second. Gary joined me because he couldn't, his computer wasn't working correctly.
Oh, so you're both there together. Okay.
Yeah, so
good.
Gary's here.
I'm still on in the other room, but I'm here listening.
Okay, good. And yet, a thought that you didn't quite follow up on is the 300-foot radius. Where does that apply, and should that be?
Never heard of it.
Oh,
There's nothing in it that has a 300-foot radius.
So this was again previous to Jonathan, but I've had personal experience with not wanting to put in a formal complaint, and I've been told directly, and again, previous to Gary, unless I fill out the form and I sign it, there is no enforcement. So I like the idea that that's what's happening now, but because that's not the message that's come out in the past, maybe they could post some of that information that explains, if I can see it from a public road, if there's an issue, and then people would understand. But that's not it's not the outlook the public has had up to a point. And I hear it all the time. And it's something, again, maybe we don't discuss here. It's something later on the town has to do, but there are people that are afraid to say anything because in the past they've gotten very different information from the town hall that changes over time. At one point when Ollie was there, she told me there was a court case that came in and that's why they couldn't even take complaints unless somebody was in a butter. Maybe that was misinformation, but once that's given out to somebody from the public, from the business desk, that's what they're going to go by. And I did have the situation where I was forced, not wanting to, put a complaint in and give my personal information. I was told up front, be aware, if I do this, I'm giving them your information. And it happened within 10 minutes, and it caused me a lot of problem down the road. I personally don't think I'd ever want to do that again. It's not worth it. But whatever the outlook is going to be the town, or whatever their policy is, I think it should just be somewhere for the public to access so they know this is the actual policy, this is what allowed, and then they can make their decision at that point.
okay. So going back to our starting point on home occupations, home-based services, it's going to get, as I thought we seem to have consensus that it's going to get completely rewritten, start over, begin with a purpose, and which was the first question of Bob and Bob, what is the purpose, and be clear about that. And so we know we're starting over. We know we've given Michaela a lot of work here on a redraft, but I'm wondering where the questions were asked by Bob and Bob about the special permit areas. Would each of you who has an opinion comment on that area?
I guess the other question I would like to put out to the group here too is the whole deal about a non-conforming lot. So again, if somebody is operating out of their home and they're not utilizing their property otherwise for the occupation, I don't see the applicability of a non-conforming lot.
How would that apply? What difference does it make that it's a non-conforming lot for home occupation?
I would agree, though, it's in the bylaw.
Noreen, just to be specific here, you're referring to a situation where you're not having an employee come, you're not having any traffic, it's just a home office.
Correct.
I
Yeah,
agree.
those people wouldn't even be coming to us for anything, so we would be none the wiser because we wouldn't know about them anyways.
Right. Maureen, your reaction to that?
No, I would agree with that. I think, I guess I sort of question though what the purpose of a non-conforming lot or not is. So for example, if you take our example for the electrician who has his vehicle at his house, but he comes and goes, whether his lot is conforming or not, I would kind of say has nothing to do with the review of the request.
Yeah.
Well, I think that might need to be taken a look at though, because playing devil's advocate, if you have a non-conforming lot, you have a very small lot, and you, as a result, our houses are close together, and you have a truck and you have some equipment that is, outside of your garage, and now as a result, it's right outside, I'll say my kitchen window. That might need to be taken a look at.
Right, so we do have a requirement for vehicles. And certainly if there's equipment storage, that would be something we review as well. But keep in mind that a non-conforming lot does not have to be small. You can have a non-conforming lot that has insufficient frontage, but is actually a huge lot, for example, right?
Yeah, and then in which case, no problem. You take a look at the lot and you go, hey, you're just non-conforming because of your frontage. There's no reason you can't put this on your 5-acre lot in the back.
Yeah, I just think, whether a lot is conforming or not is not any predominant part of whether you're granting permission or not. I mean, I think if something's going through the board and say they're landscapers and they want to store equipment, well, sure, where are you going to put it? How are you going to screen it? Conditions, et cetera. But I don't think the actual circumstance of a lot being conforming or not really has any bearing.
You're basically saying take it out as a threshold or a criteria for requiring special permit in this conversation,
sure.
And make it a consideration for the board during their discussion.
Sure.
Any other thoughts on changes for the special permit section 9.5B? No? And on the final page of what we were given us by Bob and Bob, under the uses, any changes there?
I noticed in the industrial districts, unless I'm reading it wrong, but LIA doesn't allow residential use. And so therefore home occupation would be, I'm assuming, difficult if residential use is not allowed.
Right.
So I think it's just one of those examples you would flag, we'll clean it up.
Yeah. Okay, it reminds me though of something we forgot to bring up, Jed, under the ADUs. When it initially went to town meeting, inadvertently, the general residential area was left out of where they're allowed and should be added back in.
So I was under the impression that that was for a purpose because general residence does allow other circumstances.
Yeah, it was not inadvertent, Charlotte.
I thought, oh, Jim thinks it was. All right, that's where I got that thought. It's not my own
Jim
thought.
thinks it was, but no, it was well discussed and it was not inadvertent.
So
because the general residence already allows like up to 4 residences, I believe, depending upon how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Whether you're putting an affordability in there. I'd have to go to the exact bylaw to look at it, but I believe it is up to 4 depending upon whether you can have a duplex.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so Pat, it just goes to you can have the units, but it relates to if a unit's affordable And as
Yeah.
it relates to also what has to be detached or semi-detached
Thank you, Bob.
to allow it.